Buddham Sharanam Gacchami. Dhammam Sharanam Gacchami. Sangham Sharanam Gacchami. Buddham Sharanam Gacchami. Dhammam Sharanam Gacchami. Sangham Sharanam Gacchami. Buddham Sharanam Gacchami. Dhammam Sharanam Gacchami. Sangham Sharanam Gacchami. Buddham Sharanam Gacchami. Dhammam Sharanam Gacchami. Sangham Sharanam Gacchami. Buddham Sharanam Gacchami. Dhammam Sharanam Gacchami. Sangham Sharanam Gacchami.
Dumba Jumden de Jen Java Da Jumba Yandava Zobe Sanje Rigwa Da Shamsu Demba Dewara Jewa Jiden Jemba Jebun Dube Kalu Jurwa Lana Meba Lada Minamje Dumba Sanje Jumden de Be Java Shaja Duba La Shanze Lo Chudu Yabzu Che Wo Dumba Jumden de Dejen Shewa Dajumba Yandaba Zobe Sanje Riba Dan Shabsu Demba Devara Sheba Jigden Chemba Jibun Dube Kalu Jurwa Lana Meba Lada Menamje Dumba Sanje Jumden De Pejawa Shaja Tuba La Chazelo Jodo Yazo Je Ho Dumba Jumden De Dejen Shewa Chanjumba Yadawa Zobe Sanje Rigwa dan jabzo denpa dewara jeba jeden jemba jebu duwe kalu gyurwa lana meba lada menamje Dumba zanje jumden de pe jawa shaja tuba la chaze lo chudo jabzo o zanje chudan soje chonama la chanju badu tane jabso je Dāgī chūshī jībē sōnamā jī, chōlā pēnchī sāngjī, dhūparā shō sāngjī, chūdān tsōjī chōnamā lā, chāngchū bādū tāni jāsū chī. Dāgī chūshī jībē sōnamā jī, chōlā pēnchī sāngjī, dhūparā shō sāngjī, chūdān tsōjī chonama la janju badu tani jabso je dagi chushi jibe chonama je chola penji sanje drupara sho. Good morning and welcome to our final class for this semester. We have come a long way. It's already into our final month. So today we are not going to cover too many slides, but mainly to spend some time reflecting on what we have achieved so far in 5 months. Remember, at the beginning, we have started with a special motivation, and now it is time to look back and see where we are based on or according to our set goals. So we have to examine ourselves. We are the only best person to examine ourselves. We know ourselves the best. So it is good to examine whether all that time that you have committed to listening to these talks, whether it has made any difference in your life, whether it has impacted you in a positive way or not, whether it has brought any even a tiny transformation within you. Because that's the whole purpose. Even though I find it uncomfortable to remind this, because I myself is not a practitioner. So asking you repeatedly to put them into practice is not, I don't find that comfortable to urge you on this. But then, on the other hand, I think this way, maybe my reminding you may benefit one person,
So to me, that is worth putting off this face and then asking you to try to put them into practice. So if we don't really try to put them into practice, then no matter how many times you listen to teachings, how many new texts you cover, how many great lamas and teachers you meet, it is the same, nothing different. You can only claim that I have listened to this. Yeah, I am familiar with this text. But it did not bring any change within oneself. Then it's really, in a way, it's a waste of time. So unlike other conventional activities, conventional things, it's just as long as you complete that event, that's okay. But here it is more than that. First we need to listen carefully, then we need to try to understand, then we need to reflect on what we have listened to, and then try to bring that into our life, try to integrate that into our daily lives. Only then the changes occur. Only then the transformation begins. And that's when we will be, when we start to reap the benefits. That's when we start to enjoy and taste the sweetness of Dharma. So here, as you recall, this all begins, the chapter of tolerance begins with reflecting on the disadvantages or the faults of anger and hatred. It talks about invisible faults, such as destroying our merits that were accumulated during eons, for eons. These, of course, we have to rely on Buddha's words. But it also talks about the visible impact, detrimental effect of anger. The most easy one is easy to understand that even it steals our sleep. When you are in that mood, that state of mind, we cannot even sleep properly. After listing all kinds of disadvantages or the detrimental effects, then Shantideva summarizes by saying that in brief, there is nobody who lives happily with anger. Hence, the enemy anger creates suffering such as this. So it's true. Nobody loves to be angry. Nobody wants to get angry. And we all know that once this state of this emotion arises within us, it destroyed our peace of mind. It steals away that calmness. So nobody enjoys anger. And then because of anger, we talked about creating karma that will bring us into the realms of lower realms. But even if we don't kind of believe into that, but even in this very lifetime, we know that the problems caused by anger. Who likes to be with an angry person? Nobody. Even in our family, if the father or the brother or whoever is an angry man who loses his temper so quickly, there is no real peace, no real happiness. Everybody will be so anxious, so scared, so fearful. Nobody enjoys a company of a person who has anger issue. Even at work, you fail in every step because of your anger. So that's why it says that, in brief, there is nobody who lives happily with anger. Hence the enemy anger creates sufferings such as these. So we know that, but that's not enough. We need to cultivate that conviction. The problem with us is that we know at the surface level. We fail to develop the conviction. Because of that, we don't put much importance. We don't work wholeheartedly to thwart or prevent anger from arising within us. If we have this real conviction that anger is really detrimental, then we will try everything. We will do everything within our capacity to destroy that, to fight that, to challenge our anger. But at the moment, anger arises very easily within us. So that shows that we lack this conviction. So that's why not only we listen to these teachings, but we need to spend time reflecting on this, contemplating on this, meditating on this. Bring your own life's experience to bring that conviction. Once we have that conviction, then we will never ever let anger control us. Even when we do, afterwards there will be an enormous regret which will help towards preventing future episodes of anger. As I always give this example of a bottle of poison, why don't we keep in the kitchen a bottle of poison? Even if somebody brought it there, the moment we see that's, or when moment we realize that that's a poison, the first thing is to throw it away. We don't want that to be near our food. Why? It's because we have this conviction that any amount of that substance gets into our food, there is danger that it may kill us. We may die from it. Because of that conviction, we have developed this kind of automatic response to distance ourselves from such substances. Of course, if you want to live, if you want to commit suicide, that's a different case. So that is because of that conviction. So we need to develop that kind of conviction when it comes to anger. For that, we need to realize that the faults of anger, the detrimental effects of anger, how negative and disastrous anger is. So that's why the Shantideva begins by stating the faults or the disadvantages of anger. And then he goes on to talk about the benefits of patience or tolerance. And then he discusses what gives rise to anger. So this is a typical Buddhist way, because we always talk about cause and effect. In order to prevent the effect of something, we need to first identify the causes and conditions that give rise to that particular effect, that particular result. Once we identify that, and once we do something about the causes and conditions, only then we can prevent the result from arising. So that's why the Buddha, the first teaching, is about the Four Noble Truths. It talks about identifying the suffering. Once we identify the sufferings, then Buddha talks about the origin of suffering, what gives rise to suffering, what are the causes and conditions that brings about suffering, and then talks about whether we can be free from such sufferings, and for that, what we need to do. That's when the path comes in. So it is so important to identify the causes. So here Shantideva states that the main cause of anger is that mental unhappiness or mental unease or unrest that is caused by what do you call the prevention of what we wish for or causing what we do not want. So it's basically wanting, basically when things don't go as we desire. So we wish something, we desire something. So some situations or conditions prevent that from happening. We get upset. Some people prevent us from achieving what we desire. We get angry at that person. And sometimes we don't want to experience some particular experiences, and people and condition facilitate that. We get angry. So these are the factors that give rise to this mental unhappiness. So because of this mental unhappiness, we get angry. So that's why Shantideva says that, therefore I should totally eradicate the fuel of the enemy. So once you know what is the one that gives rise to anger, then you can tackle that, counter that. In this case, the fuel of the enemy is that unease, that unhappiness. So here Shantideva, therefore I should totally eradicate the fuel of this enemy, for this enemy has no other function than that of causing me harm. So the reason why we need to cut off that fuel is that that will be like sustaining our anger. And then when this happens, when it enables the anger to be alive, what happens is it harms us, because that's the only thing that's the only job of anger. So anger's JD is just to cause us harm. As simple as that. Remember I think we covered this, the conventional enemies, they cannot commit 24 hours, full month, or whole year to cause us harm, because they have their own things to do. They need to sleep, they need to eat, they need to go to work. Even if they want to, they cannot spare that kind of time. But whereas the anger that resides within us has 24 hours to cause us harm. So when we realize that we really want to end this, we really want that anger, drive that out within us, out from us. So how we can do is to cut the fuel. It's like the gas stove. If you turn off the gas that is connected to the stove, no matter how many times you strike the lighter, fire won't start. And one of the technique or the way to think to help us destroy that, end that fuel, is he says, I shall not accomplish what I wish, and virtue will decline. If you don't stop that fuel, then what will happen is that is when we continue feeling unhappy, this discomfort, this dissatisfaction. It says when you keep having that, it says it shall not accomplish. If it can serve a purpose in accomplishing our goals, then it's okay, even if it give or sustains, help to sustain anger. But if that feeling of unhappiness can help us to achieve our goals, then Shantideva was saying that it is okay. But it does not even do that. It does not even help to fulfill our wishes. Instead, it prevents, it obstructs, it hinders our goal. And not only it hinders our goal, it destroys the virtue that we have accumulated. So that's one way to think. So when we think that way, that will help us to work towards preventing the fuel, cutting off the fuel that sustains the continuation of anger. So then Shantideva goes on to talk about specific patients. So that is based on this mental unhappiness, mental unrest, mental discomfort, or whatever you call that. In Tibetan, we call it minduba, something that is undesirable. There's this dissatisfaction. Because of this dissatisfaction, and anger arises. So Shantideva listed these three types of patients, and this is based on the sources, the objects of these objects that give rise to anger, the sources, different sources of discomfort. So the first is patience of accepting suffering. So because we live in this existence, which is by nature suffering, so there are conditions and situations that kind of hinders our desires to be fulfilled. The condition that make us unhappy. So for that, Shantideva talks about patience of accepting suffering. Since this is part and parcel, since suffering is part and parcel of our existence, it is wise to accept the suffering. If we accept that, and then if we learn ways to use it to our benefits, then not only we will be spared from the detrimental effect, we will also benefit from this. We can use this towards achieving our spiritual goal. So accepting suffering has benefits. But then the question arises that how can I endure pain? We think that, oh, I'm not made for that. I cannot endure much pain. Shantideva says, yes, it is a matter of habituation, a matter of familiarizing with that, and giving all kinds of examples to show that when we are familiar, when we familiarize in one thing, then we can endure it. It gets better, it gets easier. So there's nothing that cannot be made easier through practice and habituation or familiarity. And we discussed this last week. So how can we incorporate that into our daily practices? So just to give some suggestions, like if you have difficulty doing committing time to your prayers or meditation, you start with a short session. Maybe first start with 5 minutes of meditation. Then when you are comfortable with that, add another 5 minutes. Then it becomes 10 minutes meditation. If you continue doing that, you will find that 10 minutes seems quite short. Then you add another 5 minutes. That becomes 15. So that's one way. And then, like for example, like prostrations. If you are lazy to do any prostrations, start by doing one, then increase it. And you become more accustomed to doing it. You will find it easier Like back in monastery, elderly monks who are 80 years old are doing 100 prostrations a day. That is through practice. And then if you don't have the habit to really engage in a spiritual way, you can commit to doing maybe one stanza of this every day. You can pledge that every day I will read one stanza from Shantideva's text. One stanza a day is not too much. So when you do that, it becomes a habit, then easy. So these are the things that you can try. Of course, you already know that, but I'm just reminding you. So today we are on to a different topic now. So we have already finished discussing on the patience of accepting suffering. So now patience of certitude about reality. So sometimes our anger is not targeted at a person. Let me rephrase. We get angry because we fail to understand the complex nature of the situation. We fail to take into account the situation, the condition, the circumstances. Because of that, we get angry at the person. So here, the patience of certitude of reality is examining the circumstances. What are the causes and conditions that give rise to this situation? For example, if someone hurls an insult at you, then we get angry. But one way is, instead of getting angry, we step back and look at the situation, look at the circumstances. Why did he do that? The example that I've given before is about, let's say, a blind person. Blind person carrying a cup of coffee bump into you and spills the coffee on your maybe expensive shirt. Your first reaction is to get angry at that person. Then when you turn to see who this person is, whom you are thinking of punching him, you see it was a blind person. That wanting to punch him dissipates, vanishes, because your brain is working. Your brain is taking into account the circumstances, the situation. Oh, he's a blind person. He could not see. Then your anger kind of dissipates. You calm down. So this is what Shantideva is talking about when you talk about the patience of certitude of reality. Instead of rashly getting angry at the person, we need to consider the complex reality of a given situation. Let me give you an example. So 2 nights ago, we were watching my godmother, and we were watching this documentary show called Wild Baby. It is about the harsh lives of those babies of wild animals. So there was one scene where the lioness gives birth to 3 cubs, and then after sheltering, hiding the cubs, with the cubs hiding in their den, after a week, the mother has to go out to hunt. Otherwise, she won't be able to feed her cubs. So in the scene, she approaches a place where there are, I think, herd of deers there, and is waiting for his chance to pounce on one of them. Then we were like, oh, on the one hand, we don't want. We feel that it is not I mean, what do you call? It's ruthless. But then when we think about the situation that if she doesn't get to eat, she won't be able to feed the cubs. And then the cubs may die. So your first reaction is like, the lioness is very bad. But then when you understand the circumstances, then you feel like you are not so sure of that. So there's another story. This it was related to me by the people of Tibet. It is about my predecessor, the 6th Drupa Rinpoche. So they say that when people approach him, there was an incident where someone stole something from a family. So in Tibet those days, the Rinpoche of the area is like he is Lama, he is the judge, he is a doctor, he is everything. So they approached my predecessor, and of course the first the victim complained to Mr. Oh, I have this and he stole this and this. And then the thief told his side of the story. After listening to the thief's story, then the Lama said that, oh, I don't blame both of you. So instead of punishing, so he is saying that I don't blame the one who stole the things. So of course people are not happy that there was no decisive decision or judgment there or justice. But what I'm trying to say is that when we consider all the things together, then our perspective changes. So here, so this is the first stanza. Tiba la so to nyegi jungne chela metowar semyo namla chite tos. Tada kunjang kengi kus. As I do not become angry with great sources of suffering, such as jaundice, then why be angry with animate creatures? So if our reason for getting angry at a person is solely because of the harm or the suffering caused, harm inflicted by that person or the suffering caused by that person, then Shantideva is refuting that reason. He said that in that case, if that is our reason, then he says we should be getting angry. We should be really upset and angry at our own body, which is the sources of great pain and suffering. Because with our body, all these imbalances occurs. From imbalances, all kinds of sicknesses arises. From all these sicknesses, we suffer. So if our sole reason is that others cause us harm, others give us suffering, then Shantideva was saying that that is not a valid reason. Based on that reason, then we should be even feeling angry at our own body, even the sicknesses themselves, because that's the suffering. Because of the sicknesses, we suffer. Then says, they too are provoked by conditions. Then we said, oh, no, this is different. All these sicknesses arises because of imbalances. These arises because of different causes and conditions. So then they said, they too are provoked by conditions. Teta kunjan kenji ku pena mindu shendo yang nede jungmar juwa tar, tishin mindu shendo yang nengi nyumon jungmar jurus. Although they are not wished for, these sicknesses arise. And likewise, although they are not wished for, these disturbing conceptions forcibly arise. So we may argue that this is a different situation. When it comes to sicknesses like jaundice and all this, so these come about because of the causes and conditions, imbalances in our body, and they do not have the intention to cause us harm, whereas the person, the animate object, has intention to harm us. So that's why we can justify, it is justifiable that we can get angry at those animate objects rather than inanimate. So then it says that although they are not wished for, these sicknesses arise. And likewise, although they are not wished for, these disturbing conceptions forcibly arise. So he said there's nothing to do with the intention. It is all caused by coming together the causes and conditions. Although they are not wished for. So here what they are trying to say is so jaundice and all these sicknesses arises because of coming together causes of conditions. So because they don't have the intention to harm us. So that's why I'm not getting angry at the illnesses, jaundice, all the sources of all that illness, which is our body. Then it says that all these are same. Your illnesses or the anger, all these have no intention. These all come about because of the coming together of the causes and conditions. None of these have this intention to arise. Although they are not wished for, these sicknesses arise. Like the sicknesses, they do not have this intention that I want to be sick, or the jaundice, for example, I want to come about. And likewise, although they are not wished for, these disturbing conceptions forcibly arise. like anger and all the afflictive emotions. They come about because of the causes and conditions. Causes and conditions are there, so because of that, they have no choice but to come about. The anger does not think that or let's say the person who is angry does not intend to get angry. Nobody gets to intend to get angry. Nobody wakes up in the morning and then think that, okay, today I'm going to get into anger. I'm going to lose my temper. Nobody thinks that way. Nobody intends to be angry. Actually, it's the other way around. Nobody wants to get angry. But without that intention, anger arises, jealousy arises, greed arises, all kinds of delusions and afflictive emotions arises. So Shantideva was saying that there's no difference between anger and the sicknesses. Both of these arises because of the coming together of the causes and conditions. So you cannot really differentiate. So there is no reason for us to pick the animate over inanimate object. When it comes to the causing of suffering, it's same. When it comes to intention, it's also same. Both do not have that intention to arise, but both causes suffering and pain. Both gives suffering and pain. So it should be same. Our treatment should be same, but we are not. We always target the person. But it's very funny. It is very strange that when it comes to us, we always blame our anger. For example, when you get into anger and then you say some nasty things and then you later regret, and when you go and apologize, what do we say? What excuse do we give? We always blame our anger. So, oh, I don't know what happened to me. It was my anger that overtook me. I didn't know what I was saying. I'm so sorry, it's my anger. That's what we say. But when it comes to others, we fail to see that. We fail to realize that anger is the one. The person is not doing out of out of independence or out of choice. It is the anger that compels the person to engage in such a way. So here the main point is that when we are angered by somebody, instead of getting angry at the person, it is good to step back and then examine the situation. What are the circumstances? When the person is saying all this, is that person saying or doing with full consciousness, with saying with out of choice, or with independence, having freedom? But most of the time when we get into a rage, we really transform. That's why we say that, wow, when he gets angry, he is like a somebody else, he becomes a different person. That's what we say. So that's because he is controlled or she is controlled by his anger. The judgment is suspended. Everything is clouded. Only when the person comes down, he realizes. So that's the takeaway. Think about it. Whether he's doing out of freedom, out of independence, or somebody else, or something is controlling, or is the circumstances that is making the person do so. So that is the point. Point here is that all this anger arises when the causes and conditions come together. When causes and conditions comes together, the effect has no freedom. That's, in a way, beauty of cause and effect. Nothing can stop when the causes are present. It will bring about the causes, bring about the effect. Chowar chashi masam jang. Chowar chashi masam jang kewa namdi kinartu. Kebara chashi masam jang chowa dijin kewara jur. So this is what I was talking about. So the first one is like, it is not arises independently. There is no independent status. When it comes to anger, delusion, or illnesses, it is same. There is no independent status. It is all brought about by causes and conditions. So you cannot really differentiate based on that premise. So now it's about intention. And it says, yes, the first, whatever you say, it may be true, that all these, they do not have their own independent status, but the difference is there's this intention. The person has intention, whereas illnesses, they do not have intention. So when you say this, it says, "Chowara chashi masamja kewo namni kinarto." Kebara chashi masamja chowa deshin kewarjo. Without thinking I shall be angry, people become angry with no resistance. So you don't need to have that intention. It is not contingent or dependent on that having that intention, because nobody have this thought that this intention that I shall be angry today. People get angry when when they were triggered. Without thinking I shall be angry, people become angry with no resistance. And without thinking I shall produce myself, likewise anger itself is produced. Even anger does not think that I shall produce myself. So basically, our justification, which is based on the reason that, which is based on the premise that there is a difference. One is intentional, the other doesn't have the intention. He says that that's what Shantideva was trying to refute. When it comes to anger, there's no intention. The person does not generate that intention that I will be angry today, I'll be angry at that person. Because of the situation, it's get kicked in, and then we become angry. So now it's kind of a summary. All mistakes that are and all the various kinds of evil. So basically everything is come about because of the coming together of the causes and conditions. All mistakes like anger, hatred, greed, whatnot, all the delusions, afflictive emotions, all these arises because of causes conditions. Likewise, the actions and all the various kinds of evil, like 10 non-virtue, for instance, killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, all this come about because there are causes and conditions. So causes and conditions are the forces, are the driving forces. So when they are present, the effect, the result has no choice but to produce. All mistakes that are and all the various kinds of evil arise through the force of conditions. So they do not govern themselves. They do not have that independent status. They do not have that freedom. So this is tying back to the earlier argument that we get angry. We are trying to justify our anger at the person because he is the one. He intentionally did this to me, by saying that he is doing because anger arises. Anger arises because of the causes and conditions arises. There is no intention that I will get angry. So if a person purposely generates anger and then acts, of course you can say that, but from our own experience, we know that that is not the case. We get angry without knowing, us knowing. We are most of the time carried away. There is a stimuli and then that's it. There's something that triggers our anger and then we get angry. So that's why I think we have covered this. What is the other one? Basically saying that if we want to get angry, then get angry at the delusions, at the afflictive emotions, the one that compels the person to act in that way, instead of getting angry at the person who is just being used. These conditions, then the condition themselves, not only these delusions, such as anger and all that, are caused by causes and conditions. Even these causes and conditions, they also do not have the intention. They are also produced by another causes and conditions. Kenam tsokpa tedayang kebara chashi semba me, tege teyang tage che semba yoba mayino. These conditions that assemble together have no intention to produce anything. Even the conditions that give rise to the delusion, all this, that itself is also that itself does not have the intention to to be being or to give rise to arise, they are also propelled or compelled by the forces of prior causes and conditions, their own causes and conditions. And neither did the product, whatever that is produced, that product also do not have the intention that I am produced by this and this. So all these come together because of causes and conditions. So when we are able to think that way, then we won't be, very rash, very, firm and rigid about pointing fingers at others. Because we can see there are so many things at play. It is not just one thing, one factor. Many factors come together. So if many people are, let's say, a decision that you don't like, the decision made by, let's say, 10 people. So if that decision affects you, and if you find out that it was decided by a group of people, you don't get angry at one person. You get angry at all the 10 people, because all these have a role. All the 10 people have played a role. They are the factors in this decision. So that's how it is. So when we see the other person, he said this because he was all this, when we think of all that other factors of a given circumstances, given situation, then we will be able to kind of step back, not very fast in our making our judgment, and then getting angry at the person. So, what else is there? Okay. So that's about the verses from Shantideva's text. So we will stop here. The patience chapter, because from here it's another topic which is a bit complicated, so I don't want to touch it now. So we will continue in our next semester. But before we go, I wanted to just go through this one. This is by Acharya Chandakirti. Kanze rawan juji tu neba kede dedan zimbar meji na yangza lume shangwan jujurba telechine kange longwa jururus. So this is like a concluding remark. Dwelling independently in an agreeable place, one may still not be able to stay, falling into an abyss and losing one's independence. How will one get out later on? So basically, Chandakirti is saying that we should use our time wisely while we are alive. At the moment, we have this human body which is free from all those unfavorable conditions, which restricts the unfavorable conditions that restrict us from practicing Dhamma. We have no restriction at the moment. We have all the favorable conditions. Not only we are free from those various unfavorable conditions, we are also endowed with what is called the 10 endowments. We have the faculty, the human brain, the human intelligence. So we have a bigger brain, greater intelligence. So we really need to utilize this and show difference, show that we are different from animals. We look down on animals in a way that they are kind of ignorant. But when we closely examine closely the contact of ours and the animals, it is more or less same if we don't utilize this intelligence. Because what animals are occupied with, what animals are engrossed with, is to survive, to search for food, to find a place to live. And when we compare that with ourselves, most of us are doing exactly the same one, nothing more. What we do in 24 hours of a day is all about ensuring our subsistence, to have the, what do you call it, happiness in this life, to prevent misery, to avoid suffering in this life. So that's what exactly even the ants are doing. So if our action remains only at that, if our pursuit remains only at that level, then there is no much difference between the animal and us. So we should do better than animals. So that is, we should see long-term goals. Of course, long-term goals require sacrifices. Long-term goals requires enduring pain and suffering and challenges. But if we are able to do that, then we can call ourselves we are better than animals. So what Chandakriti is saying, that at the moment we have all that facility. We have the conducive environment. We have all the necessary facility to really pursue a long-term goal. However, if we fail to do that while we are alive, then it will be very difficult once this life ends. This life is impermanent. It can diminish any moment. It's like a flickering lamp in the middle of a wind. Any moment it can be blown out by the gush of wind, is it? That wind. So fragile. So when this happens, if we have not ensured, if we don't have enough capital money, if we have not invested enough to ensure a good rebirth, then we will definitely fall into the abyss of triloverance. And once this happens, we loses our independence. We loses our freedom, not for one day, not for 1 month, not for 1 month, but for eons. And then Chandikirti asks, how will one get out later on? When we have all that facility, when we have all that necessary conditions, if we don't do, then when we are in somewhere where it is not conducive at all, then there's no way we can do that. Let's not talk about the hell realm or hungry ghost realm, but even animal realms. You tune into one of those National Geography channel, the wildlife. How they survive is all preying on another animal. So all the time engaging in killing. So with that, how can one achieve? We say that if you commit one negative action of killing, it can land us in lower realms for many years, for eons. And then if your whole life is engaging in such negative actions, actions of killing, there's no way one can escape from such unfavorable conditions. So the point here is that, first of all, we need to realize how fortunate we are to have this opportunity. And then we need to realize that with this opportunity, how much we can achieve. We can do so many things. If we really aim to achieve enlightenment, it is possible. Even in this lifetime, it is possible. If not, if we want to achieve liberation from samsara, that's also possible. That's also achievable. And at the minimum, if we want to ensure a good rebirth, that's also achievable. So this life has all these potentials. So it is important to realize that potential. Because when we realize the potential, we will utilize it. And then we need to realize that this potential or this opportunity will not last long. If it lasts forever, of course, you have all the time. Even if you cannot do anything in this year or next year, or even coming 5 years, in the coming 5 years, if this life goes on and permanent, we don't need to worry about. But as mentioned before, this life is like a flickering lamp. It can be blown away by even the tiniest wind force. So we need to realize that I may die any minute, any time. I may not wake up tomorrow morning. If that happens, how confident I am that I will achieve human rebirth. You have to ask yourself, because you are the person, we are the one who can answer that. So if we find that we are not ready, that's the time we have to push ourselves. Give a nudge or even pinch. Hey, wake up. Prepare for your journey. When we are already on the deathbed, it's too late. Regretting will not help. So if we start from today, even if we are not able to achieve much, at least we will have no regret. Because at least you can say with honesty that I have tried my best. I have done as much as I can. So there's no regret. That's important. So today, as mentioned, is our final class for the semester. So from next semester, which will begin in the month of July, for the English class, we are going to have in-person class, and we will also try to have the online as well. But because we are doing for the first time, we are not sure whether we will be able to do that, because we have to use the slides on the laptop for those who are there in person, and then we have to also do live streaming here, and we don't have those sophisticated cameras or whatever it is. So I don't know how this will work out, but we are going to give it a try. So if it works fine, that's good. If not, I don't know. So anyway, we are going to break for the summer holiday for 1 month, this month of June, and then we meet again. So during that month, you have time, since you don't have classes. So remember this, go back and try to recap and try to see what you have gained and see what you can do. All the best. Thank you. Let's dedicate our merits. Tagi jini sabe gyawa de tendan dowa kunla kangben dan kevara chizu losan tawayi tembe nyingbo rindu seje sho jambe bawe jikda kemba dan kundu sambu tenyang dejen deda gungi jesu talob je gyawa deda tamje rabdo ngo duzon shewe gyawa tamje ngowa ganla chodo ngawa de dage gewe tsawan degunja sambo choji rabdo ngowa rigis. Thank you.